It is with great satisfaction that we announce Formula One is coming to the community of Madrid, to a region and a capital that inspires openness and confidence within and beyond our borders. With a main engine of Spain's prosperity and progress, this event, which we expect to be followed on a global scale by 70 million people, will represent an increase of more than 450 million euros in Madrid's GDP per year and the creation of 8,200 jobs. That was the quote from the president of the Community of Madrid, Isabel Díaz Ayuso, in yesterday's official press release announcing the return of Spain's capital to the F1 calendar from the 2026 season onwards. The same year that the next big powertrain regulation change will take place, the Audi brand will join the sport and the Ford badge will find its way onto the Red Bull engines. It's the perfect time for these kind of announcements as we slowly start to break the inertia of an F1 news cycle that all but ground to a halt over the winter break. We had the McLaren surprise livery launch last week, the team principal rotation at Haas, and now this. But as we head towards a record-breaking 24-race 2024 season, a lot of the immediate reaction to this news lent far more towards lamenting the loss of legendary circuits of the past, ones with a certain greatness that many fans do not feel extends towards the modern street tracks that, thanks to catch fencing and advertising boards, all start to retain this kind of visual similarity despite their globe-spanning locations. So what is there to make of all this then? Is F1 going over the top with street tracks, and what are the underlying factors at play? Well, if we include the edge cases, I count 8 of the 24 rounds of this year's calendar as street circuits. Now, we dive deeper into the technical aspects of them in an older video released before the Singapore Grand Prix, but what I think largely fueled the groans and eye rolls of fans following the announcement yesterday was the idea that F1 cars and drivers are restricted by street circuits rather than empowered by them. The amplified effects of overheating fronts, the dirty air, and the DRS trains can leave us frustrated with the resultant lack of action, teams, drivers, and organisers included. Without runoff areas, the drivers have to take that little bit of extra margin. That risk-reward calculation on the engineer spreadsheets has changed slightly, causing more caution. It's far rarer to see dramatic elevation changes like you get at Spa or the sweeping fast corners of Silverstone. The seemingly perpetual increase in the size of the F1 cars means that space on track is ultra-valuable real estate on these tight road courses. But as we've seen plenty of times across F1 history, this information doesn't always reach the best drivers who tend to thrive in those risky environments. I'm thinking like Max's final sector in Monaco last year, his close but yet so far Saudi lap in 2021, or even Lewis's lap in 2018. So in qualifying then, street circuits can be great, but the fact that our immediate recall of the best street track moments points more to qualifying than racing may give some credibility to the arguments of their critics. Nonetheless, it is too much of a generalisation, a needless jump to negation and rejection, to say that all street circuits are inherently flawed. You can have great street tracks, bad traditional tracks, great races at bad tracks, and even bad tracks that become great after some small changes. More often than not, the cars and the people of Formula One will fill in the gaps. Now, the presented design for the Madrid street circuit looks, in my opinion at least, pretty weak from a racing standpoint, a little too Formula E, I guess. From this layout contained within the official announcement, I see a lot of medium-speed corners, short braking zones, and no DRS zones really long enough to get the utility out of the system that it was designed for. And there's a bit of a Goldilocks effect to track design in general, along with all the safety and logistical standards that must be reached if you want enough overtaking to justify going racing in the first place, but not too much to make it so easy that it becomes farcical. Difficult enough to force the drivers and the cars to work hard for their rewards and make the battles tough, a bit like they did in Las Vegas. Logistically, Madrid is well prepared to host a huge event like a Formula One Grand Prix. Its transport links were a key promotional point in the press release that we got yesterday. It is of course the location of the 83,000-seater Santiago Bernabéu Stadium that Real fans pour into every weekend. The boost to the local economy that Formula One will add on top of that will be super powerful for the local area, and keep in mind too that they'll be pricing in at least 10 years of that value. And I think actually the Las Vegas Grand Prix is worth expanding on a little more here, because people were massively and justifiably skeptical of it at first. It was really controversial throughout all the build-up both for the locals and the F1 fans around the world, though it ended up being one of the best races of last year, and to a large extent that was because of the circuit design. So there are things to get right there that we can learn from. That's another circuit too that signed one of these big long-term hosting contracts with Formula One. It's a roll of the dice that's raised a huge amount of front-end capital with the hopes that down the line it will be a bastion of profitability on the FOM books. So if the organisers and the managers of the Madrid round can truly learn the lessons from the failures of the Las Vegas Grand Prix, which was still pretty important, particularly as far as the in-person fan experience goes and of course the welds on the drain covers, Madrid does still potentially have the ability to be a great host city for Formula One and become a core part of the Formula One identity. We know already just how popular the Spanish drivers Fernando Alonso and Carlos Sainz are, so bringing that to a new location, a new audience, is going to really allow Spain to showcase how much it loves Formula One, just as they already have done at the Barcelona circuit. The last time that we had two Spanish circuits on the Formula One calendar was back in the V8 era, when the Valencia Street Circuit hosted the European Grand Prix from 2008 to 2012, which is in and of itself a fascinating case study of a now defunct circuit. That race was plagued by both financial insecurity and a frequently criticised track layout that hosted some of F1's least excited races in the modern era, similar to Sochi, I guess, in its reputation. Then again, with Fernando's amazing win from P12 on the grid there in 2012 and Lando's wet-dry near victory at Sochi, those serve as evidence towards the fact that bad circuits can still host good races, if a little on the rare side. I guess maybe that year-by-year rotation offers to some critics at least a possible alternative, a pathway for the retention of more classic circuits on the calendar. I mean, the 2020 season featured amazing one-off rounds like the Nürburgring GP circuit, Mugello and Istanbul, all of which are fan-favourite traditional Grade 1 circuits that we're unlikely to see the return of anytime soon. Now, with regards to the potential losers from this move, I mean, chiefly my mind of course goes to the Catalunya circuit, though Stefano Domenicali, the CEO of Formula One, was keen to make clear that despite this move to Madrid, there's still a possible role for the Barcelona circuit in the future. He effectively said, without directly saying, that we'll keep it around if the price is right. I guess the brilliant thing about Formula One, despite how easy it is to be so alienated by all the corporate interest and the political manoeuvring behind the scenes, is that with the emotion, the passion of the people, we get to fill in the gaps. And across this world tour of motorsport, we feel that passion for our favourite drivers, our cars, our favourite moments. And without getting too abstract, I think that for everyone in some way, those emotions we feel throughout the race weekend get connected to the places that those races happen. To go to Silverstone and see the corner where Hamilton swept underneath Perez and Leclerc in 2022, or the podium at Monza where Leclerc stood for the anthem after his epic win in front of the Tifosi in 2019, or even the bankings of Interlagos over which Senna finally triumphed in 1991. Maybe that emotion is easier to connect to a venue when it's a permanent racetrack, something that is purpose-built to host those great events, rather than on a street track that's used for a few weeks a year and then after for someone's morning commute. But then I guess you could just as easily argue that the fact that F1 races on effectively normal city streets is pretty cool and inexorably tied to the history of the sport. And I think one thing that's also crucial to remember here is that, particularly with the endurance action coming up this weekend, the epic Dakar rally that's just finished, the perpetually snowballing Marc Marquez Gresini hype ahead of the MotoGP season, it's important to remember that motorsport goes far beyond Formula One, and some of the problems that fans may have with Formula One are somewhat unique to the category, products of its size, its popularity, and its frankly insane economic value. In other words, if you feel like F1 is failing to deliver on what you look for in racing, look beyond it to reignite that passion. Alongside that, keep enjoying the best aspects of Formula One without getting hung up on the shortcomings. The free market may have driven F1's profiteering here, but as an individual fan, that free market has its advantages too. Embrace that competition between racing series and across the wide world of motorsport. Find more things to cheer for, not more things to complain about on social media. But more directly, in an answer to the question that I asked in the title of this video, I really don't think it achieves that much to say that the F1 calendar has too many street circuits on it. I don't think it does now, and I don't think it does even after the addition of the Madrid circuit, simply because the delineation of a street track is not reliable enough as an indicator of the racing quality and the overall value of that destination. The blurred lines of correlation and causation make this a little bit tricky to prove, and in turn I think caused a disagreement among the fans. And I know that I haven't reached a particularly clear conclusion in this video, so let me know your thoughts on all this down in the comments. Are you upset with F1's managerial leadership, and if so, what circuits would you prefer to see on the rotation instead? For now though, I'll say thank you very much for watching. Check out the newly updated Crash.net website for coverage across the motorsport world, and subscribe here to stay up to date with our coverage of Formula One.